eventually they can get to a pretty good place this year, but where are they right now? And just hearing some of the things Steve Spagnuolo said, going back to OTAs, racing the clock and trying to get ready for the regular season with all the new and all the young, and you're just wondering, are they ready for a Kyler Murray-led offense? Are they ready for this? And going to see, and it's going to be interesting. I always feel like there's some things that happen in the openers. I mean, go back to last year. I mean, who predicted how that game was going to turn out against Cleveland? Mm. So I always feel like there's some things in the openers that you just sort of shake your head at and go, wow, I just did not see that coming. And we're going to be in that place next week. So it's going to be interesting to see what exactly those things are.
Well, and to start with the defense there, like it is a fascinating unit because it is very different from last year in a lot of places, largely because of all those rookies, which means it's a very young defense. And as you said, I mean, Spags has been asked directly about like, hey, you seem to play those veterans when you have the opportunity. Well, this year, those veterans aren't on the roster. Like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis are starters, if not in the literal sense of the word, in that 12th man sort of sense. And I imagine they probably both start in Arizona. Whenever you look at all of those moving parts, how out of character is this for a Spags defense?
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's kind of talked about it himself when he first came in. You remember, Juan Thornhill was a rookie his first year, and he kept making, Thornhill kept making play after play after play in camp and in the preseason, and we were sort of asking him, well, why don't you, what's holding him back here? And he said, I make rookies prove it and prove it and prove it and prove it and prove it that they can handle these things over and over and over again. And sure enough, he did do that with did put Thornhill in the starting lineup by opening day, but he really had to be a star for that to happen. And we saw with Willie Gay when he was a rookie, just didn't there was his playing time was at best sporadic. And last year we saw it at least early in the season with Nick Bolton. He didn't have a full role early in the season. So, but this year he's got no choice. So I just wonder whether he's going to have to scale back some of the things he wants to do, at least early in the year, to accommodate all the rookies and the newness. I mean, we know Trent McDuffie's going to be playing a lot, and George Karlaftis is going to be playing a lot, and Brian Cook at least is going to be playing some, and Leo Chenal might be playing at least some, and maybe one of the young corners, whether it's Jalen Watson or Josh Williams, they may be playing some. So, Justin Reed is a veteran, but he's new to what the Chiefs have going on here. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm just wondering whether he's going to have to just say, you know what, we're going to keep it pretty simple for these first few games, or at least until I'm comfortable that these guys can handle me putting more on their shoulders.
Well, and I mean, something that Justin Reed has talked about whenever you guys have asked about what he's doing to keep the young guys on the right track is he said, make your mistakes, but make them at full speed. I do feel pretty confident in saying that this defense has a higher top speed than last year's did. Does that speed cover enough of the of the, I don't want to say mental weakness, not like it's there, but just the inexperience for a better term? Does the inexperience get overshadowed by that athleticism and the speed and the violence of some of these guys? Or do you think we're going to see some mental lapses that turn into points on Sunday?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know that it does overshadow it. I think it helps. I mean, it can cover for some mistakes and the ability to run and all that, and the Chiefs have some big hitters on defense. I mean, that can cover for some things, but it can't cover for everything. And it doesn't take many in an NFL game. Sometimes, as you know, these games are determined by 2 or 3 plays. So, I think the Chiefs will be in a pretty good spot. I'm not predicting gloom and doom for them on defense, but I do feel like they've got some things to show. They played pretty well in the preseason, but that's glorified practice. So this is the first time they've played against a team that's going to be game planning for them, and they're going to be looking for holes, and they're going to be trying to confuse them, and we'll see how successful they are in getting that done.
Well, and since we can't actually look at a specific team now, we're not just talking about a preseason game against the Bears or whatever. Kyler Murray, you already mentioned, like he is in such a fascinating spot, both in his career with things like his organization and his contract and his head coach, and just having the weirdest offseason in football, maybe non-Cleveland division, I suppose. And also just such a fascinating talent, right? Like he's a little bit smaller, but you spread out the offense and he can find his spots. He likes to move around, but he's not a Josh Allen type of rusher, certainly. Doesn't want to take those types of hits. Whenever you look at what he might bring to this defense, particularly if you're looking at the edges and seeing George Karlaftis tested as a rookie, Frank Clark in the, quote-unquote best shape of his life for the second or third consecutive offseason, but maybe for real this time. Carlos Dunlap, Mike Dana, those types of guys. What do you see from Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense, even without DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the loss of Hopkins is hard to I think that's hard to underestimate. I mean that's a pretty big deal, and or hard to overestimate. I'm sorry, and so that's a pretty big deal. And you just look at the numbers since he's gone to Arizona, what Kyler Murray and the Cardinals have done offensively when he's in the lineup and when he's not. It's pretty dramatic. So that's definitely a break for the Chiefs. But the way Murray can beat you in two different ways is tough. That puts so much stress on a defense, particularly one that may be still trying to figure out what to do on a given call. So that's the part that I'm wondering about. If this were just a drop back quarterback, for instance, and a guy who wasn't maybe a threat to run the way he does, maybe that doesn't put so much stress on the Chiefs defensively on Sunday, but. He is. I mean, we know what he is, and that is going to stress the Chiefs. It's going to test this speed and athleticism that they have, and it's going to test their discipline. And I'm curious to see how the Chiefs stand up to this for sure.
Yeah, me too. I mean, to your point, also, it's going to probably test Steve Spagnuolo, because you're right. I mean, if you've just got somebody who's putting his feet in roots back there and tries to pick apart the defense, maybe you can, I don't know, try to play your fundamentals and work on that. But Kyler Murray is going to be more dynamic than that. I'm really interested to see how all of those elements around him shake out. Is that going to include Elijah Lee, by the way? I know this is like housekeeping scenario stuff, but he's still on the practice squad. Andy Reid said yesterday they are moving Blake Bell to IR. We don't have the corresponding move yet. Is there one more defensive addition to be made before this game in your mind?
That's the most likely scenario that Elijah Lee comes back because he's on the practice squad now. But the reason the Chiefs haven't made this move yet is they're looking at some things. They're trying to make up their mind, okay, where do we want that guy? Will it be Kendall Blanton, who just showed up? And there's the tight end that the Chiefs picked up after cuts were made. That's possible that he's on the practice squad. He could come up on Sunday. So the Chiefs do have some options there, and I think they want to get through the practice week and see exactly, okay, are we as healthy as we think we are right now? Are we going to need help at a certain position? I mean, it doesn't do them any good right now to make that move. I mean, if I'm them, I'm waiting until Saturday to bring a guy up from the practice squad. Even if you know what in your mind what you want to do, hey, you could lose somebody on the this week to an injury, and they can change their mind. So I'd be surprised, I think, if they made a move before the deadline on Saturday.
Mentioning Blanton, Andy Reid he wasn't terribly forthcoming with any of this yesterday. Not that he was terribly forthcoming about anything in yesterday's presser, but asked about the tight ends and Jody Fortson and Noah Gray and all of that in Blake Bell's absence. How do you measure the loss of Blake Bell with what this team likes to do? Because even whenever he was in Dallas 2 years ago, they went and got Nick Keiser, who since retired, I think with neck issues, if memory serves. There's been a spot for a block-first tight end in Andy Reid's offense here for a while. Do you see them trying to get Fortson or Gray into a role like that, or do you think they're going to need to do something different to try to make that role, at least not the loss not be felt quite so heavily without Blake Bell?
Yeah, I just don't know that the Chiefs can do some of the things where they kind of feature him or use his abilities, because Chiefs don't have another tight end like him. Yeah. Certainly not Noah Gray or Jody Fortson. Bell kind of was unique in what his abilities were, and I think the Chiefs are going to have to look elsewhere. And maybe the solution is Kendall Blanton. I don't know. He could be the guy who does some of the things that Bell does for him. That's another possibility. But I think, when the Chiefs go to multiple tight ends, 2 or more tight ends, I think they're going to have to do some different things. It's going to be less power football and more throwing it, because that's where the talents of certainly Jody Fortson, but also Noah Gray are.
Well, and then yesterday you asked about the running back room. I can't remember when we talked to you in terms of all the cut downs and stuff, but they ended up carrying the 4+1 running backs into the group. Ronald Jones makes the cut, along obviously with Mike Burton and the other 3 running backs who we all expected to be there. And when Andy Reid was responding to that yesterday, he kind of implied that he probably doesn't expect to have all 4 running backs active week 1 in all likelihood. Do you have a feel for what the 1, 2, 3 there would be, or how he expects those roles to fall apart? Did he give you anything yesterday that you went, all right, Coach, you gave me a little bit of information there in the subtext?
Well, just that he's thinking of splitting up the pie, even if some of those roles are small, I don't expect to see 4 running backs in uniform, not counting the fullback, of course. I don't expect to see 4 running backs in uniform on Sunday. That's really a waste of – you really need to be more efficient with that in your roster. And just based on everything we saw during the preseason and training camp, I got to believe that Ronald Jones is the odd man out here. He didn't in the most important preseason game was the second one in terms of playing time and how much regulars played. Ronald Jones didn't play at all in the first half. And even when he got in the second half, he didn't get the ball. Now, he played some and apparently made the team with his effort against Green Bay, but is that enough to overcome everything the Chiefs saw during the regular or during training camp? I'm not sure it is. Jerick McKinnon helps on special teams. Isaiah Pacheco helps on special teams. Now, Ronald Jones may eventually help on special teams, maybe even Sunday, but he's going to have to pick that role up because he wasn't doing much of that in training camp. So he's going to have to get that role and earn that role, and for him to make it into uniform. So I'm not expecting to see Ronald Jones in uniform on Sunday. Assuming for a minute that he's not, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as we know, is RB1, and I think he's going to get at least 50% of the work. And exactly how it's going to split up between the other 2 guys, I don't know right now. The Chiefs, their usage of Jerick McKinnon was odd last season. You remember they hardly used him at all until they needed him when they really had no choice toward the end, and he really delivered for them. So. I just got to believe there's going to be a role for him. I think he's too valuable in what they're trying to do offensively. And then Pacheco, he's maybe a little bit of the wild card there. What do they trust him with? I don't expect a huge role for him, but I expect something from that he'll play as well, maybe get the ball a little bit.
When you mentioned playing, heavier, more power stuff when we're talking about the tight ends and what Blake Bell would allow him to do, they can use Nick Allegretti and extra lineman stuff. We've seen that enough. But within that scope of what the offense is going to look like, we have spent so much time talking about the receivers this year, and I'm sure we'll do it here in this hour somewhere too. But whenever you do look at what you expect the pie of the offense to be cut up into, there was some talk over the course of this offseason about using some of the more power tendencies of this offensive line group and the physicality that they all have. It seems like they've settled into their best 5 pretty easily. Wiley's the right tackle, cool. But also, this team has Patrick Mahomes and all these pass catchers and is a pass-first team. Brett Veach said that in his press conference a couple times. They don't hide that fact. So do you think that they're going to do anything schematically differently in terms of how they run the ball, how much they run the ball? Has anything evolved there this offseason through your eyes?
I think it makes a lot of sense for them for the Chiefs to lean on that offensive line in the running game and kind of do some things that way. I was really surprised last year when remember early in the year, things were a little bit weird offensively for the Chiefs, and they had some games that by their standards were just dreadful offensively. The game in Tennessee, the game against Green Bay, a little bit to some extent the game against the Cowboys, but they I just thought, hey, in times of trouble, go with what you know. This is the strength of this is, the offensive line is a strength for the Chiefs now, and I just was really surprised they didn't lean on them more last year when things were going bad. And maybe I shouldn't have been, because Andy Reid, we know, is always going to be a pass-first guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when things aren't working, I feel like that's a place the Chiefs can go for some help, to bail them out a little bit. So we'll see what they do. I guess I'll believe it when I see it, but I think that's something they ought to do a little more often. If things aren't working particularly if things aren't working with the passing game, start pounding away a little bit. I don't think that's a bad strategy.
And we've been talking about this for a while now. There's the idea that maybe the Chiefs' swing tackle at 53-man cutdowns wasn't one of the guys on the roster. Roderick Johnson, who got a lot of work in the offseason, he comes and goes. And now I guess Jerron Christian is back there as a swing tackle. But to pull this one out of Jason's notebook, I suppose, if Orlando Brown goes down pregame again, or on the other side, if Andrew Wiley goes down during the game, what kind of shape is this team in? And do you have a feeling of what the hierarchy would be in terms of those tackle spots if something does pop up? It seems likely enough to do at some point over a 17-game season.
Yeah, they have some options there, and I think a lot of it's going to depend on whether it happens kind of in an emergency situation like it did with Orlando Brown. He got hurt in pregame, and the Chiefs had who they had at that point. I mean, they couldn't bring up somebody up from the practice squad or anything like that. So I think in that case they would go back to Joe Thuney, at least on the left side, and he certainly filled in well enough and showed he can do it against a pretty good team that the Chiefs can go that direction if they want. But it's one thing to do it for one day, and it's another to do it for a big chunk of a season. So I think if Orlando Brown went down for a larger portion of the season, then I think the Chiefs would have an interesting decision. I know that they weren't real thrilled with what they found in their backup offensive lineman. I'll take Nick Allegretti out of that that statement, because I think the Chiefs were pretty happy with him, but he's not a tackle. So I think Christian would be first in line. He's a veteran. At least he's done it a little bit. And then they got Prince Tegawanago, who can play that spot as well. So they do have some options, but I don't know that any of them, particularly over a long period of time, will really be what the Chiefs would hope, or certainly not what their fans would hope.
Last sort of like roster construction thing before we'll take a break and then look a little more at the Cardinals, zoom out a little bit, big picture and all of that. But we are kind of at maybe the dust settling final call on the wide receiver group at this point. It was so bizarre for everybody who was stuck watching through the preseason to never see Juju Smith-Schuster do anything meaningfully, to get relatively little work between the offense and the ones being all together and all of that. All the tight ends caught the touchdowns this year, except for Justin Watson, right? Like this is an interesting group that we had to watch through the TV screen. You were there at training camp and you saw the preseason games, and now we're here with a few practices under the team's belt. What's the hierarchy in the wide receiver room for you?
Yeah, I think the first three are clear. It's going to be McCole Hardman and MVS and Juju, no doubt. I'm wondering about that fourth spot. I thought it was going to be Sky Moore, and I do think he'll play some. But I'm wondering whether Justin Watson is kind of overtaking him. I think Justin Watson might play more than we think. I mean, the Chiefs used him a lot down by the goal line, kind of a red zone type in the red zone offense. And I'm wondering whether they're going to stick with that. They like his height and his ability to go get the ball. So I'm wondering whether he's going to be more of a factor than we're considering right now. So going to be interesting to see how the Chiefs sort through all this. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I think when it all does shake out, that Watson's going to have more of a role than we maybe think right now. We think of a fifth wide receiver, and we go, he's just an injury backup. He's not going to play a whole lot. I sense that it's going to be more for Justin Watson, at least early in the season.
Okay, well, I lied then about the roster questions because I almost asked about special teams earlier, and I thought we don't need to talk about special teams. It's a game week. But if that's the case, does that impact Dave Toub some? I mean, Sky Moore can be back there on returns, but does that mean that Reese Fountain needs to be the guy that gets the call up? Or how would Dave Toub feel about that if all of a sudden Justin Watson is now wide receiver 4?
Well, I think Watson could do both. I mean, I don't think he's going to play a big enough role where he can't help out on special teams. I don't think that at all. No, they're going to need his help because, Juju's not going to be doing it, and McCole Hardman's not going to be doing it, and MVS isn't going to be doing it. So they're going to need his help, and they think he's a good player, but beyond that, so on special teams. So I don't see Watson playing enough to where the Chiefs would have to take him off special teams.
Okay, well, there we go. We will look ahead a little more to the Cardinals. I also want to figure out if this feeling that I've been carrying through the first hour and a half of the show is just a little indigestion, or if I should just take a couple Tums and feel good about the rest of the season. We'll talk more about that on the other side of this break here in The Zone with Adam Teicher of ESPN next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Jason's logic was so confusing, it just dazes you, and you're like,
Yes.
yeah, I guess.
Yes, that's his plan. He runs circles around you.
What you're talking about.
Well, and mark that for every returner ever.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
A little more time with Adam Teicher of ESPN here in the Zone. I'm Joshua Brisco, sliding over to the big chair today. Jason Anderson is out. Beards McFly on the other side of the glass, enjoying a Whataburger. Whataburger showed up at the studio here today. Got about halfway through mine, and I've never been more hopeful that Adam would just take a nice 10-minute monologue of his own. I'll wait to the break, but I appreciate the good folks at Whataburger for swinging by. I'll tell you more about them later, but if you want to go check out Whataburger.com or their mobile app, you can order online and get this brought to you like they just brought it to us in a big box, a tailgate pack. Oh, my goodness.
My only complaint is they didn't bring me French fries, too.
I mean, look, my only complaint is that I'm not currently at a Whataburger right now, so thanks to them for bringing it over. I don't mind being in the studio with the Whataburger, though. That's the next best thing. Adam, I don't know if you saw the big news over the weekend. Tyreek Hill says he will be putting his podcast on hold to focus on football this season. What are you going to listen to instead in your free time?
Was anybody disappointed when he made that announcement? Were people bummed out when he said that?
Disappointed, bummed out, deeply heartbroken. You know, I felt a lot of emotions kind of all at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. I really have not been paying much attention to what he's been saying. I really haven't. And it's not been hard, by the way. I don't. I just feel like he's kind of an easy guy for me to tune out. So
I thought you meant podcasting wasn't that hard. I was going to agree with you on that also.
There you go. That too. But no, he's just not a guy who is a guy I'm going to pay a lot of attention to.
Sure.
When he's down in Miami now.
What do you listen to when you're driving up to St. Joe and back, or you got your headphones in the workroom? Sometimes I imagine maybe those are quotes or whatever. What's the Adam Teicher leisure playlist though? Podcasts, radio shows, music.
Yeah, the go-to podcast is the New York Times Daily,
okay.
And I don't get to it every day, so sometimes I'm listening to two episodes in a day or two or three, depending on where I'm going and what I'm doing. So, yeah, that's my go-to. And the Washington Post has a similar thing, Post Reports. Those are my two go-to podcasts for sure.
If I was going to make you live on a desert island for the rest of time and you could only listen to one artist musically, what musical artist would you take with you there?
Well, I'm going to go old school on you. It's got to be Springsteen, right? I mean,
you are a sports writer, man. I mean, that's a good.
That's what it's got to be.
Nothing wrong with that.
One.
So this is one place where I do feel like a millennial. I feel like a fake media member. Where should I start? If I said, all right, I'm on the drive home today, I'm going to crack open a Springsteen album, and I want to get it. You know, I want to get swept up in these beautiful ballads. Where should I start?
You're talking about the quintessential Springsteen song.
Yes,
now.
absolutely.
How about 10th Avenue Freeze Out?
Okay. All right. I know of it enough, but I'll start there, and I'll try to have a little book report for you by next week.
All right. I'll be waiting for it.
I'm sure I'll disappoint you, but I will at least try, which is sort of how I figured out how to manage my parents' expectations. I'll try, but you'll be disappointed.
There you go.
At least I can meet those expectations. So here's the thing on the Chiefs front, Adam, that we were talking about earlier that I mentioned last segment too. But I talking about disappointment. I feel pretty good about the Chiefs right now. I feel like we've kind of shuffled through all the receiver stuff, all the young defense stuff, all the things that we've been talking about for months. But now that we're here, I really do respect the Chargers as a real contender. I think the AFC West, top to bottom, is obviously like an incredible division of professional football. But I just kind of think I'm at a point now where I trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and these pass catchers. And I trust Steve Spagnuolo and the things that this defense will bring to the table. Where are you at right now in terms on your just before the season kind of last big picture view down the road of these upcoming 17 games? How do you feel about how this team's coming together?
Well, I think that most of the time, and it's true again this year, most of the time since Andy Reid has been their coach, I feel like they're in a real good place coming out of training camp. And red flag alert here, because I thought that last year as well. I thought they were going to start off the season really strong. But to me, it's generally no coincidence they start off the season as strongly as they do. Now, again, last year was the exception, but they've been, 3 or 4 years where they started off either 4-0 or 5-0. That's not, to me, a coincidence. I think the Chiefs, I defy anybody who saw every bit of practice like I did up in St. Joe and saw every play in their preseason to say that this team didn't get better as time went on in camp. I mean, they just get in so much good work. There's no fighting at Chiefs camp. There's no extracurricular stuff. They just get done what they want to get done every single day. And I just feel like the Chiefs are in a good place. And the things I was talking about earlier, I don't know whether those are going to be issues or not. I'm curious. They might be, and they might not be. I mean, the Chiefs might be in a great place defensively here. They might have figured some things out and, can put it together from day one. But I just feel like there's a lot new that I'm wondering about. But I'll say this also, Josh. Any team that's quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes and coached by Andy Reid, I feel like over time they're going to be okay. That things are going to work out for that team. That doesn't mean there's not going to be some bumps in the road. Like, for instance, the second half of that AFC Championship game, which was not a bump so much as a stone wall. But, I feel like they're going to be in a good place eventually. If it's not on day one, eventually they will figure it out. So we'll see. Maybe this is the year everything falls apart and I look like an idiot. But I think the Chiefs are going to be in a good place. I think they'll win the game on Sunday, and I think they'll have another good season.
I agree with you, and you mentioning the good work they get in, the work ethic, the structure, the no fights, no one's ever swinging 2 helmets, one in each hand during a Chiefs training camp practice. But can you put that into a little more context from the pre-Andy Reid teams or other things that you've just seen around the league, like what it is that gets the Chiefs to be able to accomplish so much in an off season?
Yeah, that's where the perspective is. It helps me out as I did see Chiefs camps, obviously, before Andy Reid showed up. And you could tell there were just years where they were just going to struggle right out of the gate because they goofed off in training camp and didn't get any good work in or didn't get much good work in. And, there were fights and other extracurricular stuff. And you could just tell sometimes that, okay, they're just not ready to go. This is not a team that's ready for a regular season. And, so, there's one reason Andy Reid doesn't like those practices against other teams, because there's always fights and other stuff that you just can't control and you don't want in your practices. And, that's why he does that. And he just has that's what he believes in. And I'm not arguing with him. This has proved out over the years. And, I think that's maybe why the Chiefs need to play their starters maybe a little more than other teams in the preseason, is because they don't go up against other teams. They kind of need that work and that evaluation time, because they don't do it. They don't have these other things that they can go to, these non-game practices that can maybe help them out in those areas.
I just am always very intrigued to figure out what's happening differently from group to group or league to league or whatever it may be. I mean, I'm even thinking now about like the coaching tree and everything. I know this is way too big picture for a game week, but whenever you see Mike Kafka leave and you wonder about how the Chiefs are going to replace him in the quarterback room, and then Matt Nagy comes back, or the places that are trying to sort of create those Andy Reid cultures around the NFL, or how the Chiefs are able to have moving parts come in and out within their own. Is there something connected there? I mean, I know we're talking now some schematic stuff versus coaching stuff versus how the work all gets set up, but do you see a pattern there, or a continuing characteristic or anything like that?
Well, they do have a lot of continuity for a coaching staff. I mean, hey, the 1 year, 2019, they swept the old coaching staff on defense out the door and brought in a new coordinator and a new coaching staff, and that was the one exception. But other than that, boy, they've had remarkable continuity. For even losing a couple of coordinators early in Reid's time as head coaches. I mean, they still have remarkable continuity. So I think that's got a lot to do with it. That certainly helps. And there have been years where the Chiefs have shuffled their coaching staff. I'm talking about assistants maybe now more than head coaches. This is the pre-Andy Reid time. They've shuffled their coaching staff and. Didn't see any results. Sometimes, I feel like those moves may have been made for appearance's sake rather than for any real purpose. So I do feel like that's kind of one of their secrets is that they just hearing Patrick Mahomes among others talk about how everything is so seamless for him from year to year. Everything is just there's no switching around. When he gets a new coach, it's an old coach. When Mike Kafka goes, Mike Kafka, who was brought in to be kind of his personal coach a few years ago, when he leaves, you go back to a guy he's familiar with, and I just feel like that's so crucial in everything that's going on here that. I think it's an underrated factor.
I think that's interesting. Okay, well then let's look ahead to Sunday here one more time in the zone. I suppose you'll have some press conferences and some other appearances that we'll be able to continue to get ready for game week. And of course, read all your work up on ESPN.com as well. But whenever I say, all right, standing here on Tuesday, looking ahead to Sunday, how are you feeling about Chiefs-Cardinals? What's something that you're really excited to see that we couldn't have witnessed before we got to real game action?
Yeah, that's hard to predict. I do think the Chiefs are the better team, and I think they're going to win. I called it 30-24, so I think they'll cover whatever the spread is, 4.5, whatever it is right now. I feel like they're always ready to go when the season starts, and that's don't overlook that factor. Now, last season was a glaring failure in that regard, but other than that, they've just always come out of the chute quickly. And I'm kind of, I'm not expecting a Super Bowl-ready team maybe right now, but I'm expecting one that's going to play well and get some things done on offense and play well enough on defense to get some things done. I'm eager to see how the pass rush does. I don't see any way they go back to an AFC Championship game this year if the Chiefs are 29th in sacks again like they were last year, so that's something I'll be watching as well. I want to see how the young guys do, and in particular George Karlaftis. I think he's the most important of those rookies that we've talked about on defense. I think he needs to play well. He needs to be the guy the Chiefs saw in the preseason, because if he is, I think that's going to be a bonus. So I do think the Chiefs are going to win. I don't think it's necessarily going to be easy, but I feel like they're the better team. The Cardinals have some injuries. Zach Ertz may not play on Sunday, and that certainly helps the Chiefs. So I feel like the Chiefs are good enough at this point to beat this opponent, even on the road.
Even discounting the Darrell Williams revenge game. I mean, that was what I was waiting for from you, and you never gave me that. So
yeah, I'm just wondering how much he's going to play.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's going to have a chance to get his revenge because James Conner is kind of their main guy, so I would expect. I assume Williams might play some, but I don't know enough to make a difference for sure.
Yep, unless he's 50 yards downfield at the goal line, I assume he probably won't exact that revenge. But as their deep threat, no DeAndre Hopkins. I know they got Hollywood Brown now, but really it's Hollywood and Darrell Williams downfield. It's probably their real 1-2 punch. Adam, I really appreciate you sticking in here to catch passes from the backup today. I hope I kept them on target enough to still get your stats up.
Better than a trip to the dentist, Josh. Better than a trip to the dentist.
and I'll listen to some Springsteen on the way home. I appreciate it, Adam.
All right, you do that. All right, man.
That's Adam Teicher of ESPN. You can check out his work, of course, on ESPN.com, at Adam Teicher on Twitter. I don't need to tell you any of that, though. He's Adam Teicher from ESPN. That gives you all the info you really need. We will switch gears. We'll switch gears here in about 15 minutes, talk some college ball with Braden Gall, some more Chiefs, and some other fun stuff going on around the building next here in the Zone.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
You might not be able to tell by the quality of the radio show, but I'm great.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Lots of wonderful things have happened around here within the course of this last hour or so. One of which, we got to talk to Adam Teicher. That's good. Second of which is we're back up on the stream, by the way, if you're watching the show or want to be watching the show on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. I think I got all four in the right. It's off the top of my head there. Usually I say like twoo-twoo at least once. So, not the case today, though. If you want to watch the show in any of those places, you can do that where you've been able to watch me during the break eat delicious food from Whataburger. They wonderfully brought by some food for us here today, which I have enjoyed about 80% of and will continue to enjoy this last 20% next time we had a break. They brought an incredible tailgate box here, 10 Whataburgers plus add-ons, everything in a beautiful orange and white striped box that would look incredible at your game day setup. You can order 10 single or double Whataburgers in a party box that keeps your burgers hot and cold toppings crisp. That is all there. It's separately packaged. The whole deal is, it looked like a little picnic in a box, but if it shows up at a little watch party or a tailgate somewhere at any point, specifically in what is respectfully at this point Patrick Mahomes' town, I think you will be welcomed with hugely opened arms if you bring a Whataburger box to your tailgate or watch party. So thanks to the folks at Whataburger for doing that for us here today. I have enjoyed it tremendously. We've all enjoyed it tremendously. Beards, burger.
It was good.
Thank you, Beards.
There weren't any fries, though. I was sad.
Well, you can go to Whataburger afterwards, and you can say, I'm Beards McFly from Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Where are my French
and I'll
fries?
have some French fries. And they'll say, okay, sir, here you go. That'll be whatever the price is. And you can buy the fries.
And I'll say, great, thank
And
you.
you'll say, thank you very much. You'll say, thank you very much for this wonderful service. Your food is delicious. Sorry I've been so loud about it. Also, this is like a very me thing to now talk about, but the bread, like the bun from Whataburger, really good. Like top tier, like burger joint bun. And I say that because now with the whole diabetes situation, I'm really, I got to know my carbs pretty confidently before I shovel them into my face so I can make sure my insulin levels are all figured out and everything. And this is behind the curtain. We are parting the buns right now. You can mark that if you'd like. Sorry, Whataburger, for that imagery. But I was thinking, I might open this up and like fold it in half and just eat half of the bun or whatever, because that's a thing that I do on a very regular basis now. I only eat one bun, basically. So you take one bun. If you got it, Beards looked at me like I'm a crazy person.
Okay, I get you now.
So you
understand
turn it into an open face sandwich, and then maybe you like cut it in half and just fold it up there.
Okay, I get
or you
you.
make it a taco or whatever. Well, Beards, I want you to look over here and tell me what you see in terms of remaining burger bun that I have.
I see 2 pieces of bread with some meat and some other stuff in the middle.
Because it's delicious. I took a bite of it. I was like, I'm taking the insulin anyway. I may as well enjoy myself. So, good stuff from Whataburger. Also, something to tell you here, if you're listening right now, if you are able to go, ready to go, to the Hollywood Casino 400, that is presented by Barstool Sports. It is coming to Kansas Speedway on Sunday, September 11th. You can get your own tickets at kansasspeedway.com for tickets and details and ticket information. kansasspeedway.com. But if you would like to go on us, you can do that right now by calling in 913-381-810, caller number 10. Caller number 10 at 913-381-810. You got to come pick up the tickets, give Beards your info. But caller number 10, we will send you to the Hollywood Casino 400, presented by Barstool Sports, coming to Kansas Speedway on Sunday, September 11th. Pick up some Whataburger on your way out there to the Speedway. It's a nice afternoon. We'll talk some college football with Braden Gall next, right here in the Zone.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
You know what makes me nervous about today's show?
Where do we begin?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We will most likely talk some college football here in the Zone. I'm Joshua Brisco in for Jason Anderson. That's not really technically true. I'm always in here. I'm just in a different chair. And so today, Jason's out. I scoot around the console. Beards McFly stays in the same spot on the other side of the glass. Hoping to get a hold of our friend Braden Gall here to talk about all things college football from, we had week 0. We had a little American football in Ireland, but this week was when things started going more across the country, and you still could, of course, you could nitpick about how you feel between the week 0 to week 1 being mostly games that aren't quite preseason games, but kind of feel like it a little bit. Beards is giving me a big smile and a thumbs up. Well, that's good news. That must mean that Braden Gall is here, which is good, Braden, because I was going to talk about KU football for the next, 6 straight hours. So hopefully having you here means we can cover some other ground as well. Of course, you can hear Braden Gall on ESPN Radio, the 440 Podcast Network, Athlon on Twitter, at Braden Gall. Braden, I also listened to a little Tyler Childers?
Oh,
don't know how to pronounce it, but I listened to him a little bit on your recommendation from last week. I was not let down.
Childers, I believe is how you say it, and it is spectacular. There is no question about that. And I got more. We can do this every week if you want. At the end of every interview, just be like, all right, which old school Nashville country artist who's actually new school do you need to listen to? And I'll take care of you guys. Okay,
I will hold you to that today because that came through for me last week. And I'm not like a big country guy, but what I've realized is that there's good stuff in there that I'm not willing to wade through. But whenever I was pulling up like the Tiny Desk concert this week, I was thinking, okay, now hold on, this is opening a whole new world to me. I just need you to make sure that you keep away the stuff that I don't want to listen to.
Yeah, this is really, really critical, and some of it's because I'm just a giant snob, and I acknowledge that on the front end. So this is like me saying with all due respect, but bro country that is mostly produced on Music Row in my city is garbage.
Okay.
It's almost all trash. No disrespect to your taste if you love the bedazzled jeans and the honky-tonk bars, but I'm not even including Garth and George from and Hank from the 90s. I'm talking about anything after 2005 or 6 or 7, where it just no one writes their own songs. It's the same thing about beer on a plane, and that's all it is. That is not what I listen to. And again, with all due respect, most of Nashville doesn't listen to that crap either. So there's a whole world of modern day Merle Haggarts and Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cashes and all these like Townes Van Zants and all these amazing old artists. There's a new version of them everywhere. You just got to find them. And I'm your guy for that journey. I'm happy to help out.
Okay, this is great. Well, I subscribe to your listening club. I'll give you the rest of this segment. Just make sure we don't hang up on you before you give me another one for this week, because that's the threshold I'm ready to cross to bro country is such a good phrase, man. Bro country is what I need to personally avoid. No shade if that's your thing. It's just also not mine.
Yep, that's okay. That's okay. Listen, everyone has their own tastes. and mine is just better. It's fine.
Right. I mean, objectively speaking, I've got good taste. You've got good taste. Lots of people have bad taste. No disrespect. It's all,
No disrespect. No disrespect.
It's all respectful.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't think this was where I was going to start with you today, but I knew I needed to at least say the phrase, or just really one 4-letter word that honestly could be used as a 4-letter word in terms of things that I personally am not into, but I understand that some people are. Iowa. Just the thing that Iowa did this week, I just wanted to make sure we at least covered, because I turned that game on. I saw that they had 7 points. It was late in the game, and I went, nope, I don't need this. I don't need Iowa in my life. It was not until after the game that I eventually learned how they got those 7 points and how Iowa continues to still just keep surprising me on an annual basis. They're a treasure in their own sort of twisted way.
Yeah, and awesome that they got to 7 points without scoring a touchdown.
Incredible.
That's the best part of it. No one puts a punter Heisman campaign together better than the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think the quarterback had a 1.1 quarterback rating, which I'm not even sure is mathematically possible. But no, it's not like you can be like, again, and I assume that Kirk Ferentz, the head coach at Iowa, will take a long, honest, and objective look at the offensive coordinator, his son. No, I just like it's just they're so good defensively. They're so well coached. They're so well implemented. Like the program is well run. Like everything is so good, and it's like you guys just refuse to acknowledge that the offense is a part of football. And if you could just try, like Iowa, when they have the guy, like when they have Brad Banks and I'm trying to remember who the quarterback for the 2008 team was that ended up going to the Orange Bowl, but that was the Adrian Claiborne team. Like they were so good. Like they're always great on defense. The question is, do they have the one guy on offense that makes them go? Drew Tate, they get that's when they're great. And it's like you find that guy every 12 years, and that's about it. And otherwise, they need to. Wisconsin's not much different. Most of the Big Ten West is pretty similar in this sense. Although, I would say that Purdue game was just absolutely a joy to watch on Thursday night because the quarterback could throw it around. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just about like acknowledging that they need to shift philosophically. And I just don't know if Kirk Ferentz is going to do that after like 22 years of coaching.
Well, like you said, I mean, you have to think that there's a real come-to-Jesus conversation with his offensive coordinator, and eventually maybe he cuts him out of the will if they don't score more points. I don't know what you do there. I don't know how you navigate that. But yeah, if anybody did the reasonable thing and didn't watch that game, it was 3-0, 3-3, 5-3. Thought maybe Iowa would go ahead and pack it in there. Nope. Got a second safety later on that really brought things together for a nice 7-3 late game box score. That was the final score, and really set offensive football back a little bit. To your point, defensively, Iowa's at least earned that much. Locally, did anything jump out to you? We'll make our rounds through all three of the local teams here, but did any of those results, KU, K-State, and obviously Mizzou back on Thursday, they all took care of business against teams they were supposed to take care of business against? Were any of those showings more or less impressive to you than the others?
Kansas leading the nation in yards per play is pretty awesome.
How about that? KU's back.
I love that. I'm not going to lie. I did not see a lot of any of these games because of how much was going on around the country. I've looked at a lot of box scores. I know Missouri covered, and that was good for my bank account, let's say. But I like the over on Kansas 2.5. They did some work there. So nothing like I think the entire Big 12. They didn't really schedule a whole lot this week. We're gonna learn a little bit more about them this week with a lot of these teams. But Baylor was great. Oklahoma State is back to being Oklahoma State. West Virginia, I thought, was the team we learned the most about, and they probably should have won the game. But otherwise, in the Big 12 in general, and in particular the Kansas schools, I'm not sure what we've learned. Missouri, you saw some things you like, some things you don't like. But I think by and large, anytime you're not projected to make a bowl game and you can go out there and win by more than 3 touchdowns and cover a spread against the team you're supposed to beat with a new quarterback and with some new pieces, I think that's a positive step. So we'll be paying a lot more closer attention to those schools as we get into real games. I'm drawing a blank. Is somebody playing Vanderbilt this week? No, not Vanderbilt. Somebody's playing in the SEC this week, I think. Or is it Kansas State, Missouri that's playing?
That's right. Mizzou and K-State have each other, yeah.
That's going to be fantastic to watch, and so that one's on the radar. A top 11 game of the week, and we'll learn a lot. So. Yeah,
and we can look forward to that here. I won't make you go through the scouting report on Tennessee Tech or anything here for KU, but I want to just figure out if this is me being too close to Kansas football or not. if you would have said, and look, I was expecting them to handle it. We talked about, KU's over and covering against Tennessee Tech seemed reasonable, all of that. But the fact that KU went out and just put away a team that they were supposed to put away and handled a game that was not supposed to be close and that never let it be close, and it just was the preseason game that you were expecting it to be or hoping for it to be, that feels a little bit noteworthy to me because KU has failed to do that in the past. But I don't know how much credit you're willing to give them for that.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach. I think that's the right approach. And again, as a guy who loves both these coaching staffs at Kansas schools, for that matter, and the direction that they're going and sort of how they're building things. And I don't think I could have raved any more about Lance Leipold last week on the show than I did. And again, to your point, go out, handle your business, do what you're supposed to do, and come away from it feeling like, like there's these programs that just do that in the first couple of weeks when they're not playing big non-conference games. And that's something that's been lost on Kansas forever. Not really on Kansas State, but lost on Kansas forever. And, again, like I said, most of the Big 12 did that this week. I mean, that was Baylor, that was Iowa State, that was Texas Tech even did that this week. So everybody in the league did what they were supposed to do this week. And I'm not sure we learned a whole lot. To your point, leading the nation in offense and yards per play efficiency and being 1-0 at Kansas, like that, to your point, that's noteworthy. Yeah.
Well, then into K-State and Mizzou coming up this weekend. I think I saw the line around 8.5 or 7.5, depending on when you're looking in favor of K-State, with you being on board with where that coaching staff is taking this group. I don't know how much of that you can juxtapose against each other, where you're looking at, obviously, Mizzou trying to do this in the SEC, K-State trying to build to contention in the Big 12. How do you parse the paths those two sides have taken and what that's going to mean this weekend?
Sorry, you broke up there. You're talking about the matchup with Missouri and Kansas State?
Yeah,
I apologize.
No, you're good. You're all right. With Mizzou and K-State and being obviously in, this is breaking news for some probably, different conferences. I know that was a relatively recent adjustment. But with them taking these different paths that they're at now, we get the rivalry game back. And I'm interested in how you've seen where those two teams land. And then, we'll talk about rivalries
well,
too.
Honestly, I think the line is actually pretty respectful to Missouri. Like, to give them, again, depending on where you find it, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5. I think that's pretty respectful to Missouri and what they accomplished last week, because I think Kansas State's a far more advanced program further down the road in terms of development. They have a more established, more veteran quarterback. Whether say what you want about Adrian Martinez in the past, they've got the superstar tailback that's a veteran, not a true freshman who's a 5-star. And they're at home. So I actually think that number is a healthy bit of respect for Missouri, to be honest with you. So whether Vegas believes in sort of defensive progress and growth on that side of the ball, fine. I would lean Kansas State. I would lay the points. I'm going to believe it when I see it on defense from Missouri against a high-quality competition. Again, I don't know what we learned last week in either of those games. So I like Kansas State. I like laying the points. Deuce Vaughn goes up over 100 yards, almost 8-9 yards per carry. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. So that's what's difficult, is to gauge what each of them did last week. That's probably why this number is where it is, because people are thinking, okay, maybe Missouri's better than we thought. I need to see it to believe it before I start giving Missouri too much credit and all those new pieces coming together as quickly as they did. I need to see it against some real competition. And I think it's great that we're going to get more of this. Like, West Virginia, Pittsburgh should play all the time. We should get more of these games across college football, and there's no reason why they shouldn't happen. There's literally no reason that they shouldn't happen. They can happen all the time. Texas doesn't have to leave the Big 12 to play A&M every year. It could just happen, but such is life sometimes in big business and politics. So.
Well, you beat me to the punch on that one, because I wanted to look at that game and the backyard brawl, and I was listening to ESPN Daily from last week earlier this morning, and they were talking about the Sun Belt partway through, because they've been preserving their rivalries, and obviously we're not talking about OU Oklahoma State or whatever there. We're talking about the Sun Belt, but still, I was just interested if you think that that's a trend that we're going to start seeing again. It feels like there was a very petty era, at least from Big 12 country for the most part, that there was a petty era of you leave and we're going to pretend you don't exist anymore. You left us, and we're building up the walls now. And I'm wondering if there's room for that to begin crumbling a little bit, or are we going to get more realignment, and eventually these rivalries are all going to be dead?
Well, the Oklahoma thing happened so fast. Part of the reason it happened so fast was that they knew politics was going to get involved, literal legislative bodies were going to get involved, and they did it so fast that they didn't give anybody a chance for that to be a part of the equation. So again, Mike Gundy certainly sounds like he's taking his ball and going home, but that's so on brand that I can't even, like begin to discuss that, because that's exactly what Mike Gundy would do if you've ever covered or been around Mike Gundy. I think that's bad for the fans. I think that's bad for the teams. This is the same thing that happened with Texas and A&M. The egos got hurt, and you don't want to come back to the table. And I'd like to think that we understand. Like, first of all, money should play a huge role in this. As much as we hate money being the driving force in everything in our society, there are times when it works in our favor. And the idea of getting Kansas and Missouri together for a basketball game, or Pittsburgh and West Virginia together for a football game, or Texas and A&M when they're all in separate conferences together for games that should be very marketable and profitable for somebody, I feel like should help us establish these things. Like Utah being in the Pac-12 for now, BYU being in moving into the Big 12. There's no reason those two teams still can't play every year. Like, there's no reason to keep it from and frankly, I think you could make money off of that. So why not let some capitalistic forces do some work for you there and allow those games to make a profit for somebody, hopefully the schools and ideally the athletes. But giving the fans the opportunity to watch those games is what matters, because clearly if you can take the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium and make it look like that on a Thursday night, like, I'm sorry, that is what college football is all about. Neither of those two teams are going to play for the national championship, but Pittsburgh and West Virginia played one of the best football games, not particularly great played football game, but one of the most dramatic and awesome football games we're going to see in what was a fantastic weekend. And the only problem with some of the games were that they were in these neutral sites. Like, that's the only problem with LSU Florida State is that it wasn't in Baton Rouge. So. Or Tallahassee for that matter. So it's all, give me the home sites with these rivalries. Give me Pittsburgh at West Virginia. Give me Kansas, Missouri. Give me Texas A&M, the Bedlam series. Like, I don't want to see that stuff go anywhere.
I feel like you are preaching the sermon that I've been wondering why we haven't heard it more, because what the lesson we've learned over the last decade in college sports, generally speaking, I think, is you don't matter, I don't matter, fans don't matter, history doesn't matter, conference names don't matter, money matters. Like, money is going to decide what happens, and hey, I get it. It's, largely a for-profit industry that is, I guess, shielded by amateurism and all of that. We can unpack that later. But why would this not be a time when money would rule? Like, of course, bringing the rivalries back are going to fill your stadiums and re-energize your bases. Like, that just feels like one place where pride ended up being more important than the money, which has not been allowed to happen anywhere else in college football. Everywhere else, you grab every dollar, and in this case, like, I don't know, man. What if K-State beats Mizzou here? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I want to see them play again.
Well, and that's what's interesting when you talk to folks, kind of, and have this philosophical discussion. Like, the joke that I've used and that many people have used in our entire careers covering college athletics is like Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. Well, if they were 0-11 and they played each other, it would still be a great game, and all that matters. And, like, in theory, that's kind of true. Yeah. Now, at the end of two seasons of going 0-11, is the Alabama coach still employed? Probably not.
Right.
But, like, that's a different discussion. It's more of this philosophical debate about all that matters in our lives is this rivalry. And if that's the case, this is where, to your point, like, we've had some divergence between the powers that be running college football, chasing down the almighty dollar, that has disrupted and broken up all of that pageantry and love. And now I think what is happening is that they are eventually going to learn that breaking up all of that connective tissue and pageantry and love and rivalry is eventually going to hurt the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think we're seeing, like, you're going to get a lot of casual fans watching USC and Michigan, and I'll be one of them, I'm not going to lie. But are you going to lose some diehards in the process, and does that build the product up for the next 30 years? I don't know. I don't know. I think we need to see. And I think if I'm the Big Ten, that's probably why the strategy is to grab a bunch of more West Coast teams so that there's some semblance of familiarity, because that familiarity is partly what makes college football great. Walking on the same campus streets as your father and, your wife and like, you're taking your kids back, and, like, the whole deal is part of nostalgia and culture and community, and that's part of what makes college football great. And you can't do that when, Maryland and Stanford are playing every year in, like, in baseball. Like,
right.
like
right.
That's not going to make anybody money.
You also mentioned the showdown that between LSU and Florida State. It was the final buzzer, the final kick was our intro today, because you got the energy of a last second moment in a week 1 college football game. Do you think that we're going to see more of those types of games in terms of venue and trying to stoke some of that, or was that just a good football game at a good time?
I think that this is the best weekend of football I can remember from an opening weekend standpoint, and I've kind of said it all summer that if we just allow ourselves to ignore all the noise, the realignment, the NIL, the portal, the TV contracts, all the stuff that sort of causes anxiety, if you just allow yourself to watch the games, like, you can find tremendous joy. And I think we're going to have, because the Big 12 is wide open, the Pac-12 is wide open, the ACC is wide open, the SEC after the top 2, which is a great race at the top, but after Bama and Georgia, is wide open. The playoff spots for the last one, at least the 4th spot, is completely wide open. We've got better quarterbacks across the country than we've seen in a long time. Like, I think this is one of our best seasons we're going to have from, like, a competitive drama standpoint every single Saturday. And again, this weekend is a perfect example. You go Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Purdue, Penn State, Illinois, Indiana on Friday night. Florida and Utah certainly has some playoff implications with Utah, but mostly that was just the best football game I've seen in like 9 months. And everything else, like, you can go down the line. Like, North Carolina App State has nothing to do with the national championship. You can put the national championship out of your mind while you're watching a game and just enjoy the drama and pageantry of what college football brings. And that is the real reason I fell in love with the sport, which is, again, like, let's just take Missouri and Kansas State. If they're going to play a phenomenal game this weekend and it's back and forth and there's drama in the 4th quarter and there's a little bit of rivalry there and then there's some new stars breaking onto the main stage and all of a sudden, Kansas State wins with a dramatic final drive and Deuce Vaughn scores a touchdown. Like, it doesn't matter if either one of those two teams is going to play for the national championship. In the moment, it was spectacular, and that is all that matters. Like, I hate to be like I turned into like a 40-year-old dad, which is what I am now. When I'm like, be present, choose happiness, touch grass, like, do those things in the moment, because you will never be disappointed by college football.
Well, you mentioned last week, and it stuck with me through all of week 1, like this idea of, hey, just don't worry about the playoff right now. Just watch the games that are in front of you. I don't remember if you were saying to, root for your team to win their conference or to get to the conference championship game or whatever it may be. But that really is like a pretty freeing way of doing all this that I feel like would probably reopen some college football for people who have been kind of turned off by at least a handful of the recurring powerhouses.
Yeah, I think, and again, that's the point, right? Like, if you want to pay attention to the national championship and make that be the only thing you care about, then you can do that. To me, that's turning yourself into a casual fan, and that could be fine. Like, that may be the only amount of time you've got this week. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. That's up to you as a fan of the sport. Like, I've turned into a casual baseball fan, even though I grew up a diehard baseball fan.
Yep.
Like, part of this is my New York Mets syndrome, which is I refuse to watch the Mets until they've actually clinched anything, because I know if I watch, then I'm going to be disappointed. But that's a different story altogether. But, like, I don't have time in my day with 2 small kids and all the work that I do to watch baseball every single night. So I've become a casual fan. So what I care about is the playoffs. College basketball is a casual fan sport.
Yep.
There are some fan bases that watch every game, but mostly 99% of the viewership of college basketball nationally is the tournament and the tournament only. It is a casual fan niche sport. Like, the Olympics are that way. Like, we find ourselves, like, infatuated with, it's not like the gymnasts and the downhill skiers aren't actually competing every year. They are. We just don't care because it's not the Olympics, right? And so we can choose to be the person that cares just about the national championship, and then you could just be like, all right, how is Georgia's offense this week? How did Bama's defense look? Are we worried about Ohio State's offense? Not really. It was a good team they played. All right, who can get in at number 4? Is it Michigan or Clemson? Like, you could just stay in that area if you want to. Or you could be like, go watch Oregon State throwing flea flickers against Boise State at 11 o'clock at night with a turnover chainsaw on the sideline. and like, that can be the thing you love also, or instead of. And so I fell in love with the game, honestly, through Big Ten West football, because I'm from Wisconsin. I grew up in a family that loves, Northwestern and Wisconsin and Iowa and all those teams that just play each other. like I fell in love with teams that never had a chance to play for the national championship.
Yeah.
So it's never been a part of my experience as a fan until I've gotten older and into the business, and now I've got to refocus on Iowa at the end of the first quarter turning around to wave to kids. Like that's what college football is all about.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that it depends on probably where you start, right? If you grew up loving teams that weren't in the playoff picture, you learn that way. If you're coming from NFL fans trying to figure out if they want to get into college ball, you're going, well, hold on, I don't get out of bed for anything less than a team that expects to make the playoffs in my sport, because everybody but the Texans currently think they have a shot on the NFL side. Like everybody's going to at least kind of try to buy the hope, and it's not as rich on the football side for postseason, but the day-to-day is so good, man. Like we started this conversation by talking about Iowa just because they did something that I'm not sure has ever happened in the history of the sport. Like where you win a game with 7 points, not from a touchdown. The college football is so weird, man. Like I think that's the place where even like looking for myself I mentioned here's my personal backstory that you don't really need. My parents went to Wichita State, no football team. I went to Mid-American Nazarene here in Olathe, NAIA. I don't have purple or gold or crimson and blue in my blood, so I'm a neutral observer on the college football front. What I root for is the weird crazy bleep that college football is so good at producing every stinking week.
Well, yeah, and excuse me, that I'm verklempt here, but that's
I didn't ask you a question. In fairness, I just sort of stopped talking, and then you were like, "Oh God, maybe that means it's my turn." So that's my fault.
But even the college basketball tournament is sort of like a microcosm of this, because what fans are watching is not like the nuances of a really well coached Virginia team running pick and roll.
No.
In a 30-point blowout,
right.
Which is really interesting to a basketball nerd.
Right.
But you know what they want to see? They want to see Ali Faroukmanesh knock down a three with no time remaining.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what they want to see. And so even within the tournament, you kind of go from, all right, the casual fan loves watching the idiosyncrasies of the sport in the first round, to like, all right, we kind of want Cinderella to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to watch the big guys who are the most talented and best teams play each other in the Elite Eight and the Final Four. And very rarely do those things come together. Like, Steph Curry taking Davidson to the Sweet 16 in the Elite Eight, like that kind of thing where it very rarely comes together. Now, that being said, that's maybe a bad example because Curry is such an elite talent.
Sure.
Same thing with like Marquette and Dwayne Wade and some of these other guys. Like, you want blue bloods who are the best of the best playing on the final weekend, and that's what I want in college football. Like, I want to see Georgia and Ohio State in a semifinal game, and I want to find out if they're both 12-0, who's the best. And those are the teams that should be playing for the national championship. But that doesn't have to be the thing that I focus on for the vast majority of the season, which in and of itself is basically a college basketball tournament stretched out over 15 weeks. And that's what we want, is we want to see East Carolina have 2 chances at a field goal to beat an in-state team that, like, every one of those kids probably wanted a scholarship from.
Yeah.
And that is what makes the game great. And so you've got to kind of I think it's okay to block out the national championship as a topic while you're watching games, and then on Tuesday when you're talking with your buddies, you can be like, well, I don't know if Georgia can beat Alabama. Like, I think that we can do both of those things.
Does any of that change with the expanded playoff now? I mean, on the horizon is what I was going to say. I'm not sure if it's on the horizon or if we know it's a few horizons away now. But what is the sport going for there? Does that evolve any of that, or is it more of the same?
I think the hope is, like, I think you could certainly argue that if Michigan and Ohio State, are both 11-0 this year going into that game, which is very possible, that they would eventually be playing 2 times this season. Maybe even a third time if there's no divisions, right? You're playing at the end of the regular season, then in the Big Ten title game, and then in the playoff again. Now, that would be extremely rare, but it could happen. And in those situations, are you devaluing the specific outcome of the game to some degree? Yes, a little bit. But I would argue I don't think any of those players or coaches play any less hard on any given play because there's a chance they might play in the future. Like, I mean, I've seen Oklahoma and Oklahoma State do this. I don't think it changed the way they played in the Bedlam series that there was a chance they were going to play in the Big 12 title game. In fact, I think it added to it. So I think the argument of, they're not going to play as hard, it's not going to mean as much. Like, I don't think that's of value. I think the idea that it could knock a team out of the playoffs right now, and maybe in the future it doesn't. That's certainly a thing that we could discuss, but it's going to affect seeding. It's going to affect if you get a bye week or not. It could affect if you get a home game, all things that we care deeply about in the NFL when it comes to that stuff. And the honest truth is that if we want to keep more people interested in the gravity of the national championship for longer across more regions of the country, then we've got to give them a chance to get there. And I like the number of really great programs and teams. Like, think about the things we like. For example, how many national championships have gone to the state of Iowa to die? And we could talk about Penn State in 2016. We could talk about Michigan. We could talk about Oklahoma State in 2011. Like, we could talk about a lot of teams that were great that just lost that one time and didn't get into the BCS or didn't get into the playoffs because of that one game. Well, now those teams have a chance to get into the playoffs, and we can still celebrate those great teams even if they don't win a game in the playoffs, and especially teams like Iowa State or Iowa or Wisconsin or Kentucky football, that is, or even Utah to some degree, although they've kind of grown into a bigger program. But like, I think Oregon State's going to be really good this year. So if Oregon State is 10-2 and they don't win their division, they don't play for a conference championship, but there's still a chance to get the playoff, that team will be celebrated in Corvallis for the rest of time. So I think that's the key. You put a banner up in a stadium, made the playoff, and you have a team that is celebrated forever. And, oh, by the way, you're then going to give all those teams a chance at an upset, and there's going to be upsets. It doesn't mean they're going to win national championships, but it means they're going to get into the playoff and they're going to pull some upsets. And that is what matters, is you're sort of not necessarily lying to people about the national championship, but you're kind of tricking people into staying interested longer. Because, again, going back to the basketball analogy, how many teams do we celebrate? Like, teams hang Sweet 16 banners, like, in their arenas. Yeah. What does that mean to Duke or to North Carolina? Nothing. But what does it mean to Marquette and to Davidson and to Wichita State, for that matter? Like, it means a whole lot to get to the Sweet 16. That doesn't mean you came close to winning the national championship. Yeah. So I think we can celebrate things in college football more than we do and keep people interested longer and still not devalue the regular season. There's going to be more games that are worth more and are more interesting across more regions of the country, and I think that's what's important.
All right, Braden, last thing before I let you go, what's my music rec for this week?
Let's go Margot Price. Margot Price, of course. She's got a lot of Dolly Parton vibes. So if you like Dolly, which you should because that's not bro country, check out Margot Price. She's been around for about 10 or 12 years here in Nashville. She is a force of nature on stage. So check out her live stuff. Check out her album. She's got 3 or 4. She's got a new single that just recently came out. It's got some like country widespread panic vibes to it. So she is she's spectacular. So go check out Margot Price this week on the show.
I love that we made you do a plug for somebody else right before I do a plug for all your stuff. But that feels like a good way to wrap it up. I will do my homework, and I'll let you know next week how it went.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate it. That's Braden Gall right there, right here on The Zone. You can hear him on ESPN Radio, the 440 Podcast Network, on Athlon. You can follow him on Twitter, at Braden Gall. And presumably, if you want to ask for more music recommendations, maybe he'll give them to you there. But I think we just develop a music club here on The Zone where I've got a little Springsteen to dip into from Teicher. I've heard plenty of Springsteen, but I don't think I've ever gone for Springsteen. Now, Springsteen and Margot Price on your Zone Music Club. Maybe that's what it is. Beards, do you think we could start a music club just sort of like around Jason? Like, we don't have to make him, he doesn't have to do it. This could just be a thing that, and neither do you, if that makes you more likely to be involved.
So we're going to add this to the movie list of things you haven't seen?
I would rather, it's a lot easier to listen to a 3-minute song or a 9-minute, like, Tiny Desk concert or something while you're driving than it is to sit down at home and watch Waterboy.
You don't have to watch Waterboy, don't worry about it.
I was planning on that. I picked one right there that I didn't think was really high on my list. But I don't know. I feel like music's a good way to get to know people. Movies create a lot of common ground for like references and stuff. I get that. But I've seen, some movies. And I like listening to music that I don't often listen to. Here's the other thing. You invest 3 minutes, 9 minutes, an hour listening to an album while you're driving or whatever it may be. You invest that into music time. It's less time, and you also can be like multitasking and stuff. So if you don't like it, you can just move on. But if I get, let me go see I think I have a list of movies I've written down that I was tired of being yelled at about. But if I go watch the original Karate Kid, and it doesn't do anything for me, that's like my night. I got Cult of the Lamb to play, man. I'm trying to build my cartoon cult. I've not mentioned that, I think, 3 weeks in a row. Maybe it's just 3 shows over 2 weeks. I'm going to keep trying to mention that as much as possible. I also never fully got my Madden and 2K takes off the ground, nor have we covered every base we're going to cover on the football side today, because Field Yates of ESPN will join us at 1 to continue the fun and all of the things going on here in today's edition of The Zone. I am Joshua Brisco. Jason Anderson's not here. He'll be back tomorrow. Beards McFly is on the other side of the glass. And in the meantime, tweet me your music recommendations. I'll do my best.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
If I make a point like that just like doesn't check out, feel free to come in and say, listen, you big stupid idiot. That doesn't make any damn sense.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Still the Zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Whoa! Hold on.
Breaking news.
No, wait, that's my bit.
The Colts have signed Philip Lindsay to their practice squad.
Hey! Hey, I wasn't ready to be interrupted yet. That's kind of annoying. I see here that the Colts have signed Philip Lindsay to their practice squad? That is actually kind of interesting. So one more sleeper, please, Beards. That's kind of interesting. So last night I was finally watching a YouTube video that's been up since the end of March. But I finally watched it. Beards, you're familiar with the work of Drew Gooden, I believe, yes?
I know of Drew Gooden.
He has an excellent YouTube channel where he does lots of very good things, like buying every ad on his Instagram, every targeted ad from his Instagram for like a month, and then he reviews them all sorts of various nonsense that are generally just really excellent YouTube content on a different level from most current or old YouTube content even. But he had one that he published here at the end of March where he ate like Tom Brady for a month. This was like a big thing in both in YouTube Twitter, or like YouTube circles, and also in sports Twitter. And so the fact that I have just had up my watch later list for months now, wow, like 5 months and change, actually kind of goes back to me not seeing enough of the movies I'm supposed to have seen by now. Because it's just a 33-minute YouTube video. It was like, oh, I'll watch it later. And then 6 months went by, and I was like, you know what? I would like to watch this video soon, please. So I finally watched it last night. It's very good if you're interested in just, like, good YouTube comedy and also Tom Brady comedy. What I have learned is that he already did a lot of talking about pliability. Tom Brady, not the YouTuber. There's a lot of pliability talk, but the main takeaway, I think, I have two main takeaways. One is that this is all, the TB12 method is something you can do if you're very rich, have someone to cook for you, and have constant access to fresh ingredients.
So
sort of the height of privilege.
So very quickly before we go any farther, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that made the same mistake that I just did. This is not Drew Gooden, the former NBA player that played at Kansas.
Nor is he Dwight Gooden. He is a YouTuber.
So no, I don't know of this person.
Oh, really?
No.
Sorry, yeah, Drew Gooden the YouTuber, not Drew Gooden the basketball player.
That had the patch of hair on the back of his head underneath his headband at one point where he was completely bald everywhere else.
Forgot about that.
Not
but yeah,
that Drew Gooden.
No. I legit thought that you had seen several of these Drew Gooden YouTube videos.
Nope. I was like, Drew Gooden
Really?
does YouTube stuff? So I pulled up his Wikipedia
Okay.
page because I was like, I didn't know that Drew Gooden was doing YouTube stuff. I hadn't seen this before. And when I didn't see anything, I then went to YouTube. And all of a sudden, there's a YouTuber named Drew Gooden who looks nothing like the one that's that's 6'10" and played basketball.
Yeah.
Not same guy.
No, very different. You might need to Google Drew Gooden YouTube if that's what you're looking for. Basically, what I learned about the TB12 method is that it's all very expensive and time-consuming and all difficult, but the food's fine. You just need somebody to, you need to have, a very expensive, a very, very high-paying salary, perhaps enough to have a personal chef, and then just let them bring you food all the time. But then also that Tom Brady drinks so much water that it seems like it literally might be unhealthy. Beards, you have started bringing in, this might be for Twitch, this might be a little video exclusive if you're watching the show on any of our streaming platforms. I'll try to explain it. Beards has a big water bottle. But this is not the biggest water bottle that Beards owns.
It's not?
It's not. No, man. You've got big, beefy, Big Bertha or whatever that you used to bring in.
You mean this one?
No.
This is the only water bottle I have brought in.
No.
Yes.
No. Like a full football season ago, if not more. You had a two-hand situation, man.
This is the only one that I've brought.
Absolutely. I will not be gaslighted on forgetting your water bottle.
This is the only water bottle that I have brought.
In the last 3 years?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
I bought this like 3 years ago.
Call
Or
Rudy.
2 or 3 years ago.
I need you to get Rudy's spirit to come back down or back up from wherever he is in the afterlife. You used to have a water bottle that was comically large. You had to use both hands to drink from it. Absolutely, it can't be that one. You can drink from that one. No, you don't need that support hand there. You can drink from that like a normal human being now. There's no way there's another giant rogue water bottle here that I've assigned to you over the years.
It's not mine.
I really feel like I'm being gaslit on this one.
No.
I don't think you would gaslight me on this, but I feel like I am being gaslit on this.
I think you're misremembering things.
The point being that Tom Brady has the biggest water bottle I've ever seen that he sells in his very expensive TB12 method pack. And I simply don't know how this man is this hydrated or why that directly leads to his ability to age like a vampire after mysteriously disappearing from the public eye for 10 days of training camp and then coming back with a different hairline and face structure. Recklessly speculated. But the Big Tom water bottle is $65. And it's just got Big Tom's name on it. I believe it is actually called the Big Tom. And that should make you either more or less likely to want to buy it.
Is that actually what it's called?
I believe it's actually what it's called. It may have just been what Drew, not the basketball player, but the YouTuber was calling it.
Nope, that's it. TB12, the Big Tom.
The Big Tom. You also can get yourself a vibrating pliability sphere if you want to work on your pliability.
A what now?
A vibrating pliability sphere. You can also get a pliability roller. It's just a lot of water pliability and then like fresh ingredients, which I feel like you might be able to get on the TB1 or 2 method if you just tried to drink a lot of water and eat a lot of vegetables and stuff.
I'm on the website for this thing right now, and there are like modeling shots that he is doing with this thing where they're like in the sand on the beach.
Oh, did you see the video that I think Giselle posted a week or so back of Tom Brady getting ready for one of the undies shoots he was doing?
No.
Tell you what, man. Once you see it, there's some things you can't fully forget. It wasn't a Brett Favre situation, but as far as Hall of Fame quarterbacks go, less to the imagination on Tom Brady at this point than you would have been able to say about a week ago.
This is a very large water bottle.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Tom. Well, it's too bad that I still really wanted to talk about 2K and Madden for like one breath of this show. Starting to think it's not going to happen. I just wanted to I want to talk about Beards' giant water bottle that I fully remember existing.
It's not mine.
I've seen there's a giant water. I feel like I've been Berenstain-Bears'd.
It's not mine.
There's a Mandela effect that is making me remember Beards' water bottle as being bigger than it actually is. I don't like that. I also don't like that Beards is lying to me about how big his water bottle is. It's dishonest, Beards. We've all seen it. We've all seen your big Tom.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I don't want to just come out and be like, oh, yeah, I'm a big, dumb sports idiot, radio host, blah, blah.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Upon further review, after going to the tape and talking with New York, I think Beard just had the same water bottle this whole time. About 3 years was the right timeline, and I just saw it up close again. Just held Beard's water bottle for myself, and it is bigger up close. I mean, he's farther away right now from the other side of the glass. We've got some distance between us, so it's not as big as Tom's. Tom Brady has a bigger water bottle than Beard's does, for sure.
His is also more expensive.
Also, definitely true. Generally better, I'm sure, because it's Tom Brady's. But
It's worth more, for sure.
definitely. But Beard's water bottle is larger than I thought. So, I can't imagine Field Yates thought that would be his way of rejoining the Zone for the football season, but it's true. Field Yates of ESPN is next.
You're in the zone
If I would have had to bet my life in the game yesterday, I would have been dead today.
with Jason Anderson
But I'm not really.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
The Zone rolling on here today on Sports Radio 810 WHB. No Jason Anderson. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm Joshua Brisco in the big chair today with a big honor today as well to kick off another season of Field Yates of ESPN joining the Zone for the season. Field, appreciate you standing in with the backup quarterback throwing passes today.
Well, the question is, are you Steve Young? Like, what level of backup quarterback are we discussing right now? Because we have seen legendary quarterbacks retire or move on. Perhaps you're Patrick Mahomes, right? No one knew how good you were when you were waiting in the wings. We had a suspicion, but we're not going to find out.
I do like the comp. I do feel like you're setting the expectations very high for me. I think I'm more of a Matt Moore type. You pull me off the sidelines, push me in for like 3 games of action, and then I go back to my retired life. But you know, I've got the youth there, I guess. So if you make Jason Alex Smith, I'll tell him you called him Alex Smith and I'm Patrick Mahomes. When he gets back, I'll say, here's what Field said to me.
Yeah, listen, it's my words, not yours. So you and Jason can hash that one out when he is back and on the show.
You're an excellent mediator, Field. Among other things, of course. I want to talk about some of the stuff, really happening in the year that kicks off here momentarily. But I was thinking this morning about what it must be like just sort of around the ESPN fantasy industrial complex right now. I have to think that this Tuesday is sort of like December 26th at the North Pole, where like you have finally had your Christmas. Most of the drafts have happened. How are you right now on the fantasy preseason / into the regular season knife's edge that you're balancing on?
Yeah, we're getting so close to your point. And it's weird only because, like, once Christmas is over, right, there's a pretty dramatic, I don't know about letdown, but there is, unless you have a child born on, like, December 28th or something, there's usually this cooling off period. So, yes, there will be a cooling off period for us, but it's like a pretty quick one, right? Because yesterday morning, ESPN.com published our week 1 rankings, and, like, I've already got my schedule for the week ahead. It looks like a lot of people across all shows want to talk about fantasy football. And actually, on a personal note, I have 3 of the drafts that I care about the most left between now and Thursday night, which includes 2 tonight at the same time. I will be juggling a salary cap league and a redraft league, standard draft order. So one of those 2 teams could very well include like 3 kickers and 2 defenses, or because I'm paying less attention, I could draft 2 absolute winners tonight. So I'm hoping the latter becomes the case.
Yeah. How many monitors do you have with your setup at home? You've got to have multiple, but I want to know if it's 2, 3, or more.
Well, I only have I different devices.
Okay.
As of later on today, so I got the iPad, I've got the iPhone, I've obviously got the computer going. Later on today, I have a new TV that I recently acquired that is going up, and it's going to be glorious. My wife is not happy about it, but there are certain battles that you choose to fight. You may regret them later. For now, I believe it was a worthwhile investment, and it's one of the TVs that has multi-screen utility. So while I do spend my Sundays in the office, so the need to watch multiple NFL games is I can already account for that.
Yeah.
When like the NCAA tournament rolls around, or during some of these nights in October where we've got like playoff baseball games, plus you have NFL games going on Monday or Thursday, I am in a great spot.
I saw a tweet of yours from a couple days ago about, I don't know, something about you finding your wife's burner, all along the lines of like just the fact that fantasy football season is now going to make you a fake GM for the next few months. I thought that was funny. Right? Oh, so good. And we were talking about this a couple days back. Like, all of our significant others either have sort of a tenuous relationship with the sports we cover or full-on just maybe apathy in a good time, which is not to say that there aren't plenty of women playing fantasy football, enjoying sports, listening right now. We appreciate you. It's just that those of us on the show did not marry or get engaged to any of those particular women, it seems. Does your wife still have that sort of side eye at fantasy football for real? I mean, you're on ESPN. Like, you got the big show out here.
No, she is actually a big fan of fantasy football as well. It's pretty funny. It's something that when we first started dating, she wasn't particularly familiar with. This was 6 or 7 years ago. And now I'll share a fun moment, like about a week or so ago when she was doing her draft. I just heard her from downstairs. The baby was asleep, and she was just like, yes, And I was like, what happened? She's like, I got Derrick Henry. I was expecting him to fall to 6'7". And I was like, wow, well, that's great news. Like I would have thought it was possible, not a guarantee. But she's in multiple leagues now. She actually has a draft tonight, too. So not only am I doing 2 drafts at once tonight, but the baby needs to be down because my wife is going out. Like when the ladies get together for their drafts, they throw a party. All mine, well, not all mine, but most of mine are done just on the app. And we're all in different locations. Maybe we'll throw a Zoom together if we're feeling really committed. Her and her girlfriends, they're all together. I mean, they're going to have wine. They're going to have Lord knows what's on TV, but they're going balls to the wall for this one tonight. So I have embraced her. I love how she has embraced fantasy football, but I did think that tweet was a Hall of Fame level tweet. It was so good. It was, just to make sure that I give him the proper credit. The account was @female redhead, and it was hilarious. So really impressive tweet right there that has deservedly gone viral.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you've genuinely given me something just now that these pieces have never clicked together. My fiance loves throwing big parties. I don't think I've ever pitched her on the idea of a fantasy draft party. So maybe that gets her in on a team. All of a sudden, next year we're cooking with gas. So I am, you've really given me something today, Field, and I appreciate that. I'll see if, go ahead.
I like it. Hey, I was just going to say, it's one of those things, and I don't know this for a fact, and I don't know your fiance, but congratulations, obviously. How long until the big day?
We are next spring, so we're about the halfway point right now. Yeah.
There you go. Not getting married during the football season, which I'm not saying it's necessarily grounds for divorce before you get married, but it's at least crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But congratulations. But I do think that, and I can't say this is the case for 100% of the people, but a significant majority of the people that I have encouraged to play fantasy football, and maybe even more like 95% of them, after 1 year have said, I'm coming back for more. There are a couple people that have told me, hey, I've got 3 kids and I got a full-time job and I'm managing stuff and I might not have the time for it. But there's been very few people who have said, something, that wasn't for me. I'm cool. I'm out. Almost everybody says, I'm back for more. So I wonder if your fiance, with the right group of people in the league, would embrace it like I think she probably would. I think
you're dead on this one. I'm going to try to apply this to my life, and hopefully this time next year, I've got a degenerate trying to, get some extra tips off me by, trying to grab a big board. So that's good stuff.
I love everything about it.
Well, look, you've given me so much already in these last few minutes. Let's see if we can make you give something to the listeners as well. Hopefully you've also helped somebody with a similar problem to me. I find that's generally how it goes. But we are actually here, on the cusp of real NFL football. Obviously, Thursday night, the Chiefs play the Cardinals on Sunday. We've been talking about the Chiefs from a very micro perspective for months now. Whenever you look at them, not necessarily from a fantasy perspective, we can cover all that if you think it's interesting. But when you look at all of the overhauling we've seen on this offense in particular, Tyreek Hill out. They draft Sky Moore after they bring in Juju and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. What do you see in this offense right now and how you've heard that it's going to gel together this year?
Well, the funny part is that while I have no clue how it's going to gel together, I do think it's going to gel together. What I mean by that is, and this does tie into fantasy, everybody wants to know, which Chiefs wide receiver should I draft, and which one should I draft first? Is it Marquez Valdez-Scantling? If you follow the money, right? He got $30 million over 3 years. Is it Juju Smith-Schuster, who has the best track record of the players they added this offseason, right? A few years ago, he was the Steelers MVP over Antonio Brown because he had 1,500 receiving yards. And Juju is still 25 years old. He's a young player. Or is it Sky Moore, who was sort of a draft Twitter darling, a guy that a lot of people thought had a bright future in this league? I don't know the answer. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's going to be Nicole Hardman, who was drafted at the time when Tyreek Hill's football future was uncertain, and some thought he could become a Tyreek Hill-light type of player. My general fallback is that the Chiefs are going to figure it out one way or another. And there are 2 reasons to believe in that. Well, there are more than 2. But one is I do believe, like everybody who has ever watched football, that Andy Reid is an outstanding coach, and Eric Bieniemy, and obviously an excellent offensive coordinator as well. And you can't simultaneously proclaim Patrick Mahomes to be the best quarterback in the NFL or on the very short list of quarterbacks for best in the NFL and worthy of a $45 million per year contract, and also not believe that regardless of who's out there, he's going to help you find a way, right? I know that he has had an excellent wide receiver and an excellent tight end, 2 of the very best in the league during this past 5-year stretch to help him. But Tyreek Hill not being there does not mean that this Chiefs offense is all of a sudden going to become league average. the biggest concern for the Chiefs is actually not something that has to do with the Chiefs. It's the fact, and this applies to literally every team in the AFC.
Yep.
So I mean this for Buffalo, and I also mean it for Baltimore, and I mean it for whoever you believe is the top team this year. The AFC is the SEC West right now. Everybody is good, right? And maybe there's no Alabama. That's the big difference, is that the Chiefs this year could be rock solid and go 11-6. Who knows, right? I mean, the margin for error is just so much narrower across the board. There's always a team that we think can start, 0-2, 0-3 and survive and find a way. In the AFC this year, I'm not saying I'll be eliminating teams by the end of September, but I'm going to be thinking about it. If you go 0-2, 0-3, watch out. Because I truly believe that 14 of the 16 teams in the AFC think they're going to the playoffs. I think another one thinks it's competing for the playoffs in the Jets. And I think there's one in Houston that understands it's going to take time. And by the way, that's not a shot at what Houston's doing. I actually think they're going about it the right way. I'd rather, wouldn't you kind of like to zig when others are zag? There might be some benefits for Houston from a roster construction standpoint. Teams that are willing to trade more draft picks because they want to win now. So I think 14 teams in the AFC think they're going to be playing meaningful football in January.
I agree wire to wire there. If I was Houston right now, I'd be thinking, hey, I don't mind selling when everybody else is falling all over themselves to buy. There's nothing wrong with that if you can kind of get your timeline a little bit different. And you beat me to the next point also of that AFC West in particular. Again, we're really close here. We've been watching Patrick Mahomes not just throw every game pass, but every practice pass, every training camp pass we've been allowed to watch. So whenever we look at the rest of the AFC West, or at least from me in particular, I still look around with that sort of confidence in the Chiefs figuring it out. How much are you buying the particular three teams in this division? The leap for the Chargers, the turnaround for the Broncos, what Devontae Adams brings to the Raiders?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those years where people have to, and this is never how it's going to be, but you have to be mindful of the process and not just the results, right? Because on paper, if I look at the Denver Broncos roster, I see a lot of really, really promising pieces. I see an excellent quarterback who obviously is motivated to prove that last year was the aberration and not the start of a decline for Russell Wilson. Their roster doesn't have a bunch of glaring weaknesses. There might be a couple on either side of the ball that, I've got my eyes on, but I don't see a massive hole on the Broncos roster. Same thing for the Chargers, right? Now I know that the Chargers have kind of been this team that's always had expectations and over the past half decade or so failed to meet expectations. The Raiders, other than a right side of the offensive line that's a work in progress, I also feel as though is in a really good spot. And by the way, as an example, where the Raiders are weak, they also have areas that they're just so damn good. The Raiders could put up 40 in week one, and it wouldn't surprise me because of all the pass catchers they have right now. So what I'm saying is that there's a pathway. All four of these teams in the AFC West making the playoffs. At the end of the year, though, the numbers are probably going to bear out a very different story because somebody's going to fall off, whether it's due to injuries or whether it's due to players who we think are at a certain level right now that maybe aren't at that level, or something in between. Bad coaching, who knows? And someone's going to fall off, right? Maybe someone wins 7 games in this division at the end of the year. We're saying, I can't believe we bought the hype on the Chargers.
Right.
I don't know. But I just think that while you can make a case for one team, I think it's hard right now to make a definitive stance or have a definitive stance on how the AFC West stacks up 1 through 4. I think that you're picking nits when you're choosing between Denver and LA and Vegas. And I personally am picking the Chiefs to win the AFC West. But I could also, if you told me, hey, we're in court and you got to make the case for the Chargers, I have a pretty compelling argument there, too.
Yeah. Last thing before we let you go, Field, you mentioned process over results and what the AFC has done. As I mentioned, the Chiefs start with the NFC, with the Arizona Cardinals in Week 1. If you want to talk about an offseason process that has been a little bit confusing, there have been some things out of Arizona. Obviously, no DeAndre Hopkins just yet. What do you see from the 30,000-foot view? What should we be looking for as we begin to prepare this matchup?
Yeah, kind of a confusing roster in some ways because they'll be good. And I think they actually have, as we know, they started hot the past couple of years. They were the last remaining undefeated team last year, and they've improved in each of the 3 seasons that they've had both Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray as the head coach and the quarterback. So there have been some signs of growth and progress, and yet that is a team that I look around and I say to myself, I'm not so sure, how much cornerback depth is there? Do you really want to go to do you really want to face the Chiefs in Week 1 with cornerback being perhaps your number 1 question mark? My answer is no. That being said, what I do think about the Cardinals is that offensively they're going to find ways to stress you because of Kyler Murray's dual threat ability. Not totally convinced that the wide receiver group is going to be clicking on all cylinders right away, because at least there is some uncertainty about Rondale Moore as of right now, and Hollywood Brown is not quite the player that DeAndre Hopkins was the past couple of seasons, even if he did seem like he was starting to dip a little bit last year. So I think they're good. It's a good test for the Chiefs coming out of the gate. I'll make my pick now and say that I have the Chiefs in week 1, but Arizona's one of those teams that I see them as somewhere between like 7 wins and 11 wins this year.
You can follow him on Twitter at Field Yates. Turn on ESPN. Throw a clicker at your screen. You'll find him on TV at some point or another. And, of course, also the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. Field Yates joining us the rest of the year, all football season long right here in the Zone. Field, appreciate you catching passes from Taylor Heineke today. We'll get you Carson Wentz back next week. That is a comparison neither of us are happy with.
Come on now. Come on. That's even unkind to Jason, right? Jason has been traded twice in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to each Monday talking to you guys.
Taylor Heineke's nice. Carson Wentz is a little bit of a basket case sometimes on the field. I'm just saying. Appreciate it, Field. We'll talk to you again soon.
I agree with you.
Every Monday, all season long, Field Yates will be here on the Zone. Yeah, today's Tuesday. Yesterday was Labor Day. Yeah, I'm Joshua Brisco, not Jason Anderson. It's a holiday, or the day after at least. It's really a football holiday in our hearts as well, because there really is Chiefs and NFL football just around the corner. You can hear Thursday Night Football right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB on Thursday night. And then, of course, Chiefs-Cardinals on Sunday. I'll be live with the Sports Radio 810 WHB postgame show as soon as Chiefs-Cardinals wraps up. So much more to get ready for the remainder of this week. So much more Zone, at least a little more Zone. We'll keep doing the show whenever we come back.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Now, it's time for Beards' book review. Pew, pew, pew.
What do you think, Beards?
It was really good. I enjoyed it.
Very good.
This was Beards' book review. Pew, pew, pew.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Okay, listen, there's some quarterback ranking stuff that I kind of want to get to. There's some big picture media talk that I've seen percolating across my timeline today that I would like to get to. I feel like I made a really salient point about the problem with 2K and Madden in terms of sports video games right now. I wanted to get to that. But I think there's a better chance that I get to any of those things once Jason is back tomorrow than I do that we get to the thing we're actually going to begin this segment with. Beards, I hope you're ready. Audience, there's no way you are, but I appreciate you being here anyway. Without further ado, let's get Beards' High Fantasy TV show review.
So which one do you want to talk about first?
There are 2 shows on the docket here. Are we 3 episodes deep in House of the Dragon?
Yes. Third one came out on Sunday.
That is the Game of Thrones prequel.
No spoilers here. Don't worry.
Okay.
On either show.
And then we have 2 episodes.
Yes.
Of the Rings
of
on.
Power.
I was gonna see if I could get there. I would have said Rings of Power. 2 episodes deep on the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings prequel.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably turn this music. I want this music to be present, but I don't want to have to shout over it. Like I'm casting a spell! Don't change the dial if this isn't your thing! Beards has to have this one! Let Beards have this! I want to hear about both of them. You know what, Beards? Here's how I want to decide which one we start with. Which one have you been happier with to this point?
Probably Rings of Power.
Tell me about Rings of Power.
Because I watched that one the most recent.
Tell me, let's start with Rings of Power then. Lord of the Rings prequel on Amazon Prime Video.
Man, it's pretty.
Really?
Yes. About 5 minutes into it, they start off with this little whole prologue section of leading up to where the actual show starts. And after that was done, I went, "Oh no, I'm sold on this." It looks spectacular. You can see where they spent all that money.
The billions of dollars that went into this.
It's one of those things where I was watching it and the scale of everything made me just want to be like, I wish I had seen this in theaters because I'd seen on the Reddit or whatever.
No, bring him in. Bring him in.
Yeah,
Bring him in.
already
Come
left.
on in, Shane. Come on in. What did he say?
I don't know. I didn't hear him.
Shane, did you like Lord of the Rings show?
No, you nerds. Talk sports. Talk about Batman.
I'll give my months-old review of Robert Pattinson's The Batman after we get through this.
Excellent. Good. Anyway.
I liked it.
I had seen on Reddit or whatever, some people had seen it in theaters.
Oh,
they had a
interesting.
big
Okay,
premiere.
yeah.
That would have been wild to see.
Sure.
It's really good.
Do
you have questions?
I don't want a ranking out of 10 because I don't want this to infringe on shot clock review
Nope, don't worry.
territory. No, that's great. That is about all the information I need. I think I just needed a little push
It's
to make
really
sure I
well
wanted
done.
to watch it. And you're saying that it's good if you enjoyed Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
What if you enjoyed Lord of the Rings but didn't love The Hobbit?
Then still watch it. 'Cause
Great.
It's excellent.
Then we're good. What about the House of the Dragon?
House of the Dragon's been really good as well.
Is it The House of the Dragon or just House of the Dragon?
I think it's House of the Dragon.
Or is it just House of Dragon?
I don't think it's that one.
Tell me about it. Tell me about House of Dragon.
It's been good as well.
Welcome to Dragon House.
I've really enjoyed the acting that they've had in it.
Dragon House is like the reality TV show spin-off of this show 15 years in the future. Go ahead.
Wow. I'm trying to think of the best way. It feels smaller than Game of Thrones did.
Sure.
Just because they have not left the castle that much, the capital.
Sure.
And when they have, it's been kind of just outside a little bit, hanging out for a little bit at a time, then they just retreat back inside.
Smaller in scope so far,
It's been
though.
smaller so far.
Very
I know
early.
they're going to do a time jump at some point. They've been doing time jumps a little bit in each episode, but they've kept the same cast. But there will be a time jump where they replace a couple of the main actors and actresses with somebody else. but the people they have had so far have been very good.
Do you think Matt Smith wishes he could just be cast as a character and then just stay that character for a long time for once?
I think he's staying in this.
Okay.
I think he's staying. I think it's the two leads that play the young girls in this. They're the ones that are going to age up a little bit more.
So Matt Smith's not going to die and come back as Peter Capaldi?
No, I don't think so, no. That would be a weird choice for them. They're both good, though. If you enjoy fantasy stuff, watch them both.
What if you enjoy fantasy football?
Watch them, too.
Okay, good. We should have, if the music bed would have been longer and you would have had a little more content, we could have then had a third prong of your high fantasy review of, like, your fantasy draft that you just did, but you didn't do that. So
I didn't. Here's the most fantasy football I have done in this year. My wife and I went to Buffalo Wild Wings last night for dinner. As we were leaving, I saw about 10 guys over in the corner. They all had their laptops, and I took it a second, and then I went, oh, no, they're doing a fantasy draft. That's what they're doing.
You went to dinner at B-Dubs on Labor Day.
Uh-huh.
You and your wife might have been the only two people there not doing a fantasy draft. That's incredible.
It was funny.
You and your wife went to B-Dubs on Labor Day for dinner, dressed as elves and an elf and an orc. Oh my God, this is very confusing. They said fantasy special, and I'm here just as Galadriel, the high elf of
right name, wrong pronunciation.
Galadriel.
There you go.
I'm dressed as Galadriel, the high elf of Westeros.
Why are you like this?
And then I turned to Dumbledore and said, "You have my sword."
Why?
Me, Galadriel, from the House of the Dragons. The House of the Dragon. It's
Dragon House.
Sorry, excuse me. The House of the Dragon. It's like Ohio State. We branded ourselves on this one. Shout out to me, Galadriel. Anyway, thank you, Beards. I fully intend on watching both of those.
Uh-huh.
I do. No, in a real way, not in the Waterboy way. Hey, Beards, I'm going to tell you this.
That's okay. I agree with you on the Waterboy way.
I plan on watching the House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power before the seasons have completed. Not like I plan on watching an Adam Sandler movie.
I'll take it.
Which is like, yeah, Jason, if you come over to my house and kidnap me and put me under siege and don't allow me to leave for fear of my own safety, I will watch an Adam Sandler movie of your choice. I'm going to still give my sports video game take since we're here presumably in a space where if you didn't stick around through that, we should have done this in the reverse order probably. Oh, well. I think I have my working theory on why Madden and 2K kind of stink right now. First of all, they finally put Devin Booker on 2K and then gave alternate covers to, I think, a couple of, or at least Diana Taurasi. It might have been 2 WNBA players. I can't remember off the top of my head. Michael Jordan, I think, is on the cover. Mm-hmm. Maybe again.
I think that's like a specialty version.
It is. It's like it's a 2K23, like Legend Edition.
Yeah.
But then there's another like Legend Edition with, I believe, Diana Taurasi. And now there is a J. Cole version.
Yeah, we don't need that.
J. Cole is on the cover of 2K. You finally gave Devin Booker 2K, and you made him share it with 3 or 4 other people? There are more versions of the cover out right now than there need to be. It's not like you're selling steel books with J. Cole. They're digital. People are buying digital games. Anyway, that's not the point. That bothers me as a Devin Booker stan, but not as a video game player.
I mean, at least it wasn't Luka he was having to share it with.
Correct. Look, I mean, if Devin Booker and Luka Doncic ever want to share, take a picture together, both of them holding their Western Conference championship trophies, they can do that. They could each do that, each holding one, because they've each been there once. Hold on, I'm hearing right now. No, only Devin Booker's done that. Oh, that's crazy.
Any victory you can get there.
Damn right. Damn right. You know what victories I got? Watch my team play in the finals. Second place. Let's go silver. But
anyway,
I think that where we've arrived perhaps on 2K and Madden. I was watching this clip earlier where Ja Morant was driving to the basket and dunked it. And he might as well have gotten into a car and then like driven around literally behind the wheel, then gotten out of the car and then laid it in. because it just felt slow. It didn't feel terribly explosive. This is something, I know this is a weird comp, stick with me here. The new Ninja Turtles game, it's like an arcade brawler, like 8-bit art style, but it's all brand new. There's also a version that's like all the old games in one game. I haven't played that one yet, but I played some of the new one, and the phrasing that stuck with me was from Justin McElroy on the Besties podcast. Not surprising if you've been following my work for any period of time. Love the McElroy family content. Love the Besties podcast. I think it was Justin that said playing that Ninja Turtles game felt like how you remembered playing the stand-up arcade Ninja Turtles games. It felt like how it felt to play that at age 12. If you go back and you play the stand-up arcade Ninja Turtles game, it's still good, but it's not as rich of an experience. Most people listening right now probably have an experience of playing NBA Jam or Michael Vick in Madden 04, I think, right? Maybe it was even later. Maybe you were playing Vince Young in Madden 08 or Donovan McNabb. I can't remember if he was 06 or 05 or where, but I think Vick was 04. I loved NFL Street growing up. NBA Street, also tremendous. And I'm thinking through this today for the first time, but I think that sports video games have largely, and FIFA might be an exception, I'm not sure, I haven't played a ton of FIFA, I've played some. But I think sports video games are more concerned with being realistic than being fun. Or with being true to real life more so than being true to how it feels to do it in a video game form. Which is why old Madden or NFL Street or NBA Jam, they were almost a interpretation of football. Like it is an exaggeration to some extent. And whenever you try to perfectly code every block or every perfect step of footwork to try to get to the right side of the basket so you can come down with your right hand, I wonder if some of the realism hasn't dulled what it because experiencing it as a player is not as satisfying as it was whenever enjoyment of the game was more important than realism to the game. Does that track for you, Beards? You've played some of all of that.
It makes sense. One other thing I would say is I am one that specifically just plays the NBA 2K games. I haven't bought one of those since 2K20, but I played a little bit of the recent one because it was on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And those, because I like to do my career mode.
Sure, yeah.
The thing that I have noticed as that has continually gone on is they will continue to add more and more stuff into it because to flesh out the quote-unquote life of an NBA player or whatever.
Right.
Which means advertisements, promos, we gotta put Gatorade in here somehow.
Yeah.
Beats commercials and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you just kind of lose track of what you're there for, which is play basketball.
And I love an RPG. I playing NFL Street 2 on the GameCube as a child, I spent probably just close to the same amount of time getting my players in the coolest possible outfits as I did on their gameplay. I spent a lot of time on stats and outfits in addition to the gameplay. I love all those aspects of a game when it's done really well. And maybe the common ground between kind of what I'm thinking about and what you're thinking about there is it kind of feels like sports video games have lost the plot a little bit. Kind of forgot what they got there for. Which is why a game that feels good to play is really valuable. I've become a little less snobby about video games, I think, over the last couple of years maybe, because something that just feels good to play and gives you a good experience is really worth a lot. Not every face mask call needs to be perfectly executed if it feels explosive to be Derrick Henry. That seems like that's the point. Also, I mentioned this briefly a couple of shows ago. Have you played with the Oculus at all?
No.
I didn't think I was going to be like a VR person. I don't have my own still. I'm not making a beeline to buy one as soon as possible because the more that all gets fleshed out, the better. But putting that on and just being in the base world where you're about to select your games was a wild experience. It really takes a second to remind yourself. You have almost no way of remembering that you are not in that world until you step on a Lego or accidentally punch your friend's wall because you are trying to swipe away from a cartoon gun or a super hot attacker. It is really wild, and the only thing I can think about the last the back half of when I was playing with the headset on, was if there's ever a quarterback perspective football game that could be run through that, it might not happen for a decade, especially with licensing deals and everything.
MLB would probably be a good one for that too.
Boy, I'll tell you what. Here's why it wouldn't, because you would just go 0 for a million. But if you got a little bit of help, a little aim assist, which kind of goes back to like how does this game feel to play, dude, absolutely. I am not lining up to play any baseball video games anytime soon. If you said all of a sudden you can stand there, and I played the Wii a lot growing up. Some of the motion control stuff can be kind of hacky. Sometimes you want to sit on a couch with the controller in your hand. I get that. I really do. If you had to stand in a batter's box, one hand on the top of the other with your controllers there, like the grip of a baseball bat, I bet that would feel pretty darn good to play. You might have to quit after 3 innings because you're in worse shape than you thought, or you tore your rotator cuff trying to throw a slurve in AR. I don't know. But man,
slurve?
A slurve. It's the funniest name of a baseball pitch that I could think of. Also sounds like something you could order at like a Sonic. It's a slider curve. Slurve. I had to put a little S, a little slurve. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe also there's just been less evolution in that form of sports video games compared to the rest of the video game world. But it really just feels like we've been buying the same games for a decade that have just maybe been getting slightly worse or at least slightly less fun. Also, maybe we're old fogies and we're just saying that we like the things that we liked when we were 13. Totally on the table. I just want to play NFL Street 2 forever. I mean, there is something to that.
I said earlier when we were like, you were trying to talk about this very quickly, I have real thoughts about this that we don't have time for in 30 seconds.
Yes.
You're basically just buying a roster update for $60 every year. And I have always thought about the idea of you buy NBA 2K, the base copy, which is the current one, whichever one that is, it's for $60. And then every year there's like a $30 or $40 update that you buy. That's the roster stuff, the new story mode, and all that kind of stuff. So where you're not spending every year $60 on the same game, just a little bit shinier.
They're just going to keep
doing
it because you'll keep buying it. Yep. You're right, though. When I was playing on PC, it was probably 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. I think Madden 08 was the last game to get a PC release for quite a long period of time in there. And so I had Madden 08. And there was some forum on like a PlayStation forum that was releasing PC updates to the Madden 08 rosters, and so I was updating my rosters into the 2010s.
That will do that, or people will upload their own rosters or whatever.
Good ones with headshots and stuff. That's how I was playing Madden for a very long time, just in franchise mode, because that should explain quite a bit about me in all likelihood. Did you know Ben Neiman's a Cardinal?
Okay.
Ben Neiman, Darrell Williams revenge game, huh? There's your sports thing. We will take a break. Jason Anderson's out. If this segment didn't make it, I was going to say painfully obvious, and then I realized it might be a little too on the nose for some of you. If you're not in pain, Jason Anderson is out today. I'm Joshua Brisco here in the big chair. Beards McFly on the other side of the glass. One more segment of The Zone before we hand you over to the program. We'll do that next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson
All right, if you come back tomorrow, the show will be better. I promise.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
No Jason Anderson. Thought I would use that at the beginning of the show today at some point. Forgot about it. Just remembered we have it. I'm Joshua Briscoe, though. Jason will be back tomorrow. Beards on the other side of the glass, regardless. He just calls you Beards, never Beards McFly, I've noticed. Beards.
I don't think you knew about the last name part.
Really? It's like the second half of your Twitter handle, a part of your full name. I don't know. It's probably too late in the show to come up with this particular thing. I've got a serious sports take to end the show on, so everybody hold your breath. We should just figure out if there's anything that we need to plan for to try to, get Jason to start using your full name. Maybe we figure out why he started calling me Joshua, which I've noticed recently. Haven't had the guts to ask. I don't want to interrupt him when he's getting the segment going. Go Jason Anderson, Joshua Briscoe, Beards. That's his whole thing. We're with you for the next 4 hours here. Should I start doing a Jason impression and see what happens? What did you just say into the quiet around you, Beards?
I thought my mic was still on. I said, he's back already?
No, I would have to I'd have to jostle the microphone a lot more. And there are a couple more buzzwords that I'm afraid I don't actually want to say right now because I do think, unfortunately, the real time to do this would be in the middle of a dead time in sports to break out the zone bingo card that we began brainstorming months ago. What's that?
There's a bye week.
Yeah, maybe it's a bye week thing. We finalized the zone bingo card. Also, you and I have to have our squares on there. So me asking Jason a question he wasn't prepared for and then derailing a segment or something like that. You
haven't seen a movie.
Oh God, that's a freebie right there. That's a free space. That comes up literally every show, I think. It's come up several times on this one. We might have some space to do it. If you've got any great fun ideas of how we can, I don't know, anything else we gotta weave in, you can tweet all of us. I never give out my Twitter handle anymore because it's in the little liner thing, and I assume that for a long time doing AES, if you were interested in following me on Twitter, you already were. But maybe that's changed in the daytime. Maybe you want to unfollow me now, and you couldn't remember what my handle was. Beards is at Beards McFly. I am at JB Briscoe. No E at the end, folks. It's just JBBRISCO. And then Jason is at J810 Anderson.
I don't remember. Is JB Briscoe with an E at the end already taken?
I also don't remember. I'm pretty sure it is. I think somebody would have signed up for it, but I don't know if it wasn't.
There is a JB Briscoe.
With an E.
There's one
Joined
follower,
May 2009.
And they're following the same person that is following them.
One tweet looks like spam. So hard to differentiate, honestly. I get people, trying to complain about me with the wrong name, trying to heap praise on me with the wrong name, whatever it may be. Here's my serious take to leave you on today's show. We talked about high fantasy, fantasy football, and now this. This has kind of been just percolating throughout the show today. I first saw one of the tweets that went all the way back to a conversation that started around 10 a.m., I saw it pop up on my timeline a few times through the quote tweet of Eric Eager of Pro Football Focus, a regular on the program, of course. But there's this idea of, hey, the national media is burying the Chiefs and the season hasn't even started yet. And Eager's point was along the lines of hey, the Chiefs aren't being buried nationally. We don't have to frame everything this way. Somebody responded to Eager, and he said, apparently Bart Scott, I guess, is on that grind. Whoa, what? Maybe Bart Scott is on that grind of, hey, the Chiefs, you know what? Justin Herbert 1, Russ Wilson 2. The Chiefs have too much overhaul, missing the playoffs. All right, cool, man, fine. What Eric said was Bart Scott does not represent the consensus opinion of the media and, much more importantly, the betting markets. And here's the media literacy thing that I would offer today. When you are talking about the opinions given by a single media member, name them when you do that. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is, the best thing that you can do as a media consumer is to name the person. That is not the same thing as saying, oh, well, the media says... Because the media, as a label is an enormous catch-all. The media could include everything on every possible extreme and spectrum of the news, of politics, of sports, of whatever. But if some Broncos blog says the Chiefs are the fourth best team in football, or fourth best team in the AFC West, and I were to say that, which I won't even say for fear of being cut that way, those have different implications. Or if it's a Broncos blog, or it's Field Yates, those have very different implications. So if you say, if I was to say, oh, the media loves the Chiefs this year, the media has the Chiefs winning the AFC West. Well, that would include me and Beards and Jason and Field Yates, as he said earlier this hour.
Don't put words in my mouth.
But if I said, oh, the media loves the Chargers, you'd go, yeah, they do. They always love them. Why do they always love the Chargers so much? Whoa, hold on. Who am I talking about? Oh, the media's burying the media doesn't think the Chiefs are even going to make the playoffs. Sorry, who? Do you mean Bart Scott? That's fine. Bart Scott might be right. He won't be in this case, but he might be. But if you are correct, hey, you want credit, name me. Bart Scott gets it right. 20 weeks from now, we all ought to give Bart Scott some credit. You want to say he gets it wrong and you want to put his head in the toilet, give him a swirly at the end of the year. Well, you need to be able to identify that's Bart Scott, not some grand amalgamation of all things that is the media.
Just put all the media members in the toilet and give them swirly.
Fair enough. But I also think it would help the, hottest take wins culture if everybody had to put a name tag on their take. The Chiefs are going to go 500 with the tie because there's 17 games now. Boom.
Isn't that just Twitter?
To some extent, yeah, but then that's why individual people can get dunked on Twitter. You quote tweet and all of a sudden, blam, 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 you've now ruined someone's day because you dunked on them appropriately. We need to be a little more discerning. Name the people instead of going big umbrella stuff. The program with Todd Lebo filling in for Seren Petro, I named them, is next.